Hi, I'm Robert Osborne, and welcome. Thanks for spending some of this time with us. This being Wednesday, it's time for another 24-hour marathon devoted to film adaptations of famous novels. The novels we're going to focus on this November 14th are all great mystery and suspense novels by American writers. Sound like fun? Well, do stick around. Up first for us is A Game Changer, the first movie directed by John Huston. It's also the movie that made Humphrey Bogart a major star. So welcome to the world of Private Eye Sam Spade and the hunt for a statue of a Maltese Falcon. This is a 1941 film adapted from the popular novel called The Maltese Falcon, written by Dashiell Hammett. Now, it's far from the first movie version of this story. It's actually the third feature made from that book. Earlier, there was a 1931 B-level film version, also titled The Maltese Falcon, with Ricardo Cortez and Bebe Daniels. Then in 1936, another minor version came out, one that starred Bette Davis and Warren Williams. That one titled Satan Met a Lady. But neither of those films could hold a candle to the one we have for you next, making our movie one of the rare films you can point to without apology as an example of a movie remake that's better than any earlier version. This third incarnation is so good it's been placed on the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress. Well, you might ask, why is this John Huston version so much better than those earlier two? Well, for one thing, Huston did the unthinkable. He stuck to his story just as Hammett wrote it in his book. Huston also chose the perfect cast, which includes Sidney Greenstreet in what was his very first film role. Also, Peter Lorre is in it, Gladys George, Lee Patrick, and Ward Bond, plus maybe the best femme fatale in any detective movie ever, and that's Mary Astor. This is the same year that Mary Astor gave an Oscar-winning performance in another Warner film called The Great Lie. Our movie is one made with style, energy, and great passion, and that shows on every frame of the film. Here from 1941, here's The Maltese Falcon. This was the very first film for Sidney Greenstreet, who played Caspar Gutman. Greenstreet was 61 at the time and weighed 300 pounds. He was a stage actor who caught director John Huston's eye when Greenstreet was in Los Angeles performing on tour in a play with the illustrious acting couple Alfred Lunt and Lynn Fontanne. Until then, the leading candidate to play Gutman, and a wild example of off-beat casting, was S.C. Zakal, he with the fat cheeks who came to be affectionately known as Cuddles Zakal. But with this film, Sidney Greenstreet, far from the cuddly type, earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor, and then went on to become one of Warner Brothers' most valuable character stars. Often teamed in movies with Peter Lorre. They made 9 films together, in fact. Up next, Bogey's back, this time not as Sam Spade, but as writer Raymond Chandler's equally tough private eye, Philip Marlowe, in a complicated crime drama directed by Howard Hawks, which also stars Lauren Bacall.
Tonight on Turner Classic Movies, it's a real page-turner for great adaptations. Next with Raymond Chandler's The Big Sleep. Then people tend to vanish at the drop of a hat in Agatha Christie's 10 Little Indians. And Truman Capote dares to give a sympathetic ear to 2 Who Killed in Cold Blood. TCM gets a little malicious tonight.
Kathleen?
Yes.
112.
You believe, don't you? You think it's true?
Of course it's true. These atheists don't know nothing. Of course there's hell, flame, there's damnation, there's torments.
One of my favourite books is Brighton Rock by Greene. I think I was about 14 when I first read the book. And it's kind of growing up in England, it's one of those novels that you just know you have to read at some point. Brighton Rock is about a young man called Pinky who has this streak of malevolence and violence in him that terrifies everybody around him. And he gets this girl to fall in love with him because she has evidence that could condemn him, and he knows that if he marries her, she can't be forced to testify against him.
You won't give me away to her, will you? I mean, tell her it wasn't you-know-who who left the card.
Pinky, I don't care what you've done.
When I first came to know the character of Pinky, I thought there was something kind of cool about him. But it's by virtue of being a sociopath, I now realise, you know, it's in that compelling way that most psychos do. They're pretty, you know, a lot of them very charming people.
What's your name?
Rose?
You and me ought to get acquainted.
Edinburgh is sort of synonymous with the book, I feel now at least, you know, and that film is, you know, has become so iconic. I would have been 14 or, you know, around then when I first was getting into the book and the film. I was just so thrilled to suddenly be in this world where these, like, big ideas are being discussed. And that's what's so great about Graham Greene generally, is that he always found an interesting framework to discuss massive ideas about religion and forgiveness. Also, what's interesting about the film is that even though it's kind of a crime drama and it's set in Brighton, which is quite a bright place, it's actually kind of shot like a Hammer movie. It's really moody and atmospheric. And also, the ending is very different in the book from the film, and it's one of the bleakest, most devastating endings to something that I've ever read. Like, it leaves you numb. But in the film, they do something very clever, because obviously they have to make it a slightly more cinematic ending, but they found an interesting way to do that. But seeing where film can accentuate the original material is one of the most fun parts about, I guess, the adaptation process. You know, especially if you've got an interesting director who has an interesting take on that material, then you will be offered a completely fresh perspective on that book.
Experience the most memorable literary works ever translated to the big screen as Turner Classic Movies presents Great Adaptations, Mondays and Wednesdays this month on Turner Classic Movies.
Good night, my sweet.
Good night, my sweet.
No wonder Admiral Byrd takes all those trips. There's no privacy left in America. Julie, you draws your mind.
Well, if I am, it's your fault. You can't get away with this. I'm going to tell her all about it.
Julie, will you be quiet?
No, I won't.
Go up there. I won't fetch you.
Oh, I won't be quiet.
And they quarreled here in the hall?
Yes, sir. They said some awful things to each other.
What did they say to each other?
Mr. Patterson called Mrs. Patterson an awful name.
What was it?
Well, it was awful. I'll have to write it for you.
Then what happened? I didn't. I made that one up.
I don't know when I've had a more delightful evening.
No, nor do I. Well, good night, Miss Nolan.
Mr. Branch.
Good night, Mother. You know, I've never had a mother.
He's never had a mother?
I'm Robert Osborne. 24 hours a day, Turner Classic Movies gives us all access to the greatest films from Hollywood and around the world. And the best way to keep up with what's playing on TCM at any given moment is with this terrific viewer's guide, Now Playing. Each month, it takes you inside Turner Classic Movies with complete listings of every film being shown that month, who stars in it, who directed it, what it's all about. All that and more at your fingertips. And Now Playing goes way beyond being just a program guide. We've listened to your feedback and created this sleek new format, which is easier to read and contains more features and commentary. Every month, subscribers to Now Playing receive a beautifully designed magazine with rare photographs of your favorite stars. Inside, you'll find information on TCM's innovative festivals and tributes, Hollywood history, movie trivia, an at-a-glance overview of the month's programming, and a challenging crossword puzzle to test your movie knowledge. Each month, I also write a cover story that takes a look at a movie legend. To order your subscription, simply visit our website at tcm.com/nowplaying or call 1-800-TCM-1002. You can also write to Now Playing at P.O. Box 420933, Palm Coast, Florida 32142-0933. For just $12.95, 12 issues of Now Playing can become your guide to the greatest movies of all time from Turner Classic Movies.
Grace Kelly. Spencer Tracy.
Vincent Minnelli, typical Hollywood story.
Damn good actors.
When I heard that David Lean was going to make a film of Dr. Zhivago, so I immediately got the book and started reading it to find if there was a part for me. I never imagined that they would ask me to play the title role. I went to Madrid to meet David Lean about 3 or 4 months before we started shooting. And he said, Omar, I have to talk to you about this film that we're making. He said, I'm going to ask you to do something extremely difficult for an actor to do. I want you to do nothing at all. At all. Not to emote, not to have any reaction, not to do anything at all. And I said, why is that? And he said, because when we were writing the script with Robert, our problem was how to show in a film that a man is a poet. We can't have him reciting poetry to say this man is a poet. So we decided that the whole film would be seen through his eyes. And so we can show beauty, we can show the leaves of a tree in autumn flying in the wind. We can show his poetic side through his eyes. The extraordinary thing in that film, in that script, is that this is a love story between Yuri Zhivago and Lara, basically. And they don't meet until about 2 hours into the film. They never meet. You ever come to Moscow?
Brother.
If only there was someone to look after you. But of course, if there were, I'd be destroyed by jealousy.
Zhivago, don't. My dear.
Making a big romantic film, it's quite different from making a historical film. This was not a historical film. This was what they call a saga of love and destiny and fate. No one can tell a story better than David Lean. When you worked with David, you knew that it was worth it. He breathed and lived cinema, and when he was on the set, he was all cinema. I like being Dr. Zhivago. I wish I were someone like Dr. Zhivago, because I think he was probably the most perfect person that I have ever heard about. I mean, I can't think of a defect that he had, Yuri Zhivago, the character in the book. I can't see any defects in him. He was perfect.
Omar Sharif takes a title role in the screen adaptation of Boris Pasternak's novel of love, loss, and the Russian Revolution, Dr. Zhivago, Monday at 8 p.m., only on Turner Classic Movies.
Turner Classic Movies and Warner Home Video present TCM's Greatest Classic Legends Collection, Cary Grant and Lauren Bacall. From timeless comedies to heartfelt dramas, the versatile stars lend their acting chops to two astonishing collections. With each set, get 4 movies for one low price, and it's a great gift for the holidays. Cary Grant delights with My Favorite Wife, Night and Day,
Don't stop.
The Bachelor and the Bobby Soxer,
Hi! Mel Greene, Shoogie Doogie.
and Mr. Blandings builds his dream house. Lauren Bacall tantalizes in Dark Passage,
I get the idea, and that's all I need.
Key Largo,
The cause isn't lost as long as someone is willing to go on fighting.
Blood Alley,
Don't ever try ordering me around, Captain Wilder.
and Designing Woman.
I don't know you very well, do I?
From the debonair to the extraordinaire, these are 2 collections you cannot do without. TCM's Greatest Classic Legends Collection, available now at shop.tcm.com and Barnes & Noble DVD locations.
Hi, I'm Robert Osborne. Up next in our 24-hour marathon of movies based on novels of mystery, suspense, and imagination, we have a film which has 2 great American authors associated with it. Crime novelist Raymond Chandler, who wrote the original story, and the famous Southern novelist William Faulkner, who was one of the co-writers of the screenplay. Our film is The Big Sleep from Warner Brothers in 1946, based on Chandler's book, which was first published in 1939, which also introduced to the world the character of Philip Marlowe, a tough-as-nails private eye who immediately became a big favorite with Pulp Fiction fans and 7 years later with filmmakers as well. Our movie was the first one in which Marlowe was seen on screen, and they couldn't have picked a better guy to play him, Humphrey Bogart. And it's also a film with the perfect leading lady, too, Lauren Bacall, in what was her second screen teaming with Bogart. The reunion of these 2 stars together was so highly anticipated that it pretty much became the driving force of the film. In fact, the screenplay went through several revisions in order to add scenes to the movie in which Bogey and Bacall could spar and be sassy with each other and recreate some of the heat they generated in their first film together, To Have and Have Not. So, truth be told, this is not a very faithful adaptation of Chandler's book. At times, the plot gets actually downright confusing. Even the cast and crew were puzzled by it. At one point, it said that director Howard Hawks was so confused, he sent a telegram to Raymond Chandler and asked him to explain who the murderer really was. Chandler apparently responded to Hawks, "I don't know." In the end, though, nobody minded, certainly not movie fans. All they really wanted to see were the sparks generated by the new screen combination of Bogey and Bacall. Here, released by Warner Brothers and based on the first novel by Raymond Chandler to be published, this movie version, one of the great examples of film noir. Here's The Big Sleep. Like many novelists who wrote for the movies, William Faulkner, who co-wrote the screenplay for this film, wasn't very happy working with the confines of a movie studio. Legend has it that while he was working on this film, he asked his bosses if he could work at home instead of the studio. Well, after hemming and hawing, they reluctantly said, well, okay. After that, the studio didn't hear from Faulkner for many days. There was never an answer when they called Faulkner's apartment in Los Angeles. And eventually, they finally called his family in Oxford, Mississippi, to see if they knew where he was. And he answered the phone. When he was asked, what are you doing there? Faulkner said, it's where I live. You said I could write at home. Up next, Hugh O'Brian stars in a whodunit, one of several film versions of a classic novel by the great mystery writer Agatha Christie.
Tonight on Turner Classic Movies, our spotlight on great adaptations continues with Agatha Christie's 10 Little Indians. Then Truman Capote dares to give a sympathetic ear to Two Who Killed in Cold Blood. And Ralph Meeker is Mike Hammer, Private Eye, and Vicky Spillane's Kiss Me Deadly. TCM packs a punch tonight.
If you're a fan of classic films and love collecting them, TCM Shop is your one-stop destination to discover new movies and collect old favorites, with thousands of DVDs and Blu-rays to choose from, plus books, soundtracks, and classic movie merchandise. Get a jump on your holiday shopping and find that perfect gift for the classic movie lover on your list with our holiday gift guide. The more you buy, the more you save. Choose from a variety of titles like the exclusive TCM Vault Billy Wilder collection, the greatest classic films Doris Day collection, the fabulous CD Doris Day with a Smile and a Song, and the family favorite Miracle on 34th Street. Our collectibles section has great holiday items, such as the Vera Ellen White Christmas doll and a Christmas Story leg lamp table light. Be sure to enter TCM's Holiday Shop Sweepstakes November 1st through November 16th for a chance to win a flat-screen TV, Android tablet, DVD packs, TCM gift cards, and other great prizes. To enter, visit shop.tcm.com/sweeps. So shop early for big savings, from silent cinema to the latest releases on DVD and Blu-ray. Over 50,000 titles to choose from at shop.tcm.com or call 888-9-TCM-SHOP.
Atticus, Scout, Tom, and Boo Radley return to the big screen for one day only. In Harper Lee's unforgettable tale of innocence lost, Turner Classic Movies presents To Kill a Mockingbird 50th Anniversary event in movie theaters nationwide Thursday, November 15th. Part of Universal Pictures' 100th anniversary celebration. Academy Award-winning actor Gregory Peck stands tall in his most timeless performance.
That's no ideal to me. That is a living, working reality.
In a newly restored, rare theatrical presentation. Plus, before the movie, TCM host Ben Mankiewicz explores the production and times behind this all-American classic. And the landmark film is now available on Blu-ray and DVD in an all-new 50th Anniversary edition. Turner Classic Movies presents To Kill a Mockingbird 50th Anniversary event in movie theaters nationwide for one day only, Thursday, November 15th. For information on theaters and tickets, visit fathomevents.com.
Hi, I'm Robert Osborne. Up next in our look at some nifty crime and suspense novels which have been made into films, we visit the world of mystery writer Agatha Christie. What we have for you is one of her most famous stories. It's 10 Little Indians. This movie version, produced by Seven Arts in 1965, based on a Christie novel which was first published in England in 1939. Then 1 year later was published here in the States under the title 10 Little Indians. Ours is the second of 4 movie versions so far based on that same terrific novel. And it's no surprise the story gets retold again and again because it's so good. It is indeed a goodie filled with surprises and really nifty plot twists. It's about what happens when an assortment of people, strangers to each other, are invited to a mansion in a very isolated setting and then begin being bumped off one by one. In Agatha Christie's original book, the 10 strangers are lured to a remote island expecting a very nice relaxing weekend. Instead, they begin to realize they've been lined up like sitting ducks, and they can't figure out why. This 1965 adaptation that changes the details from the book a bit, starting with its setting. This time everything unfolds in a chateau in the Swiss Alps. And typical of the 1960s, there's more sex and violence than Dame Agatha Christie chose to include in her novel. The steamier stuff in our version is handled by Hugh O'Brian and Shirley Eaton. Hugh, best known at the time as television's Wyatt Earp, and Shirley, the beautiful blonde who was the victim of the gold paint job in the James Bond movie Goldfinger. Others you'll see in the cast include Stanley Holloway and Wilfred Hyde White, both from My Fair Lady, also Leo Guin and Fabian. That's right, the 1960s pop idol Fabian's in it. Also, Christopher Lee is involved, but just how? Well, on that, my lips are sealed. Here, directed by George Pollock, we bring you the 1965 version of Agatha Christie's 10 Little Indians. This 1965 version of 10 Little Indians was the second time that Agatha Christie's story had been adapted to the screen. The first was a really nifty version, which is actually my personal favorite of all the versions, and it was made in 1945 starring Walter Houston, Barry Fitzgerald, and Louis Hayward, and that was titled And Then There Were None. Now, in 1974, movie makers took another stab at the story and made many drastic changes in it. That time it was set in the deserts of Iran, and believe it or not, Orson Welles provided the voice of the mysterious host, and Oliver Reed and L.K. Summer headed the cast of Suspects and Corpses. And in 1989, the fourth and latest adaptation hit the screens. That was also called 10 Little Indians, but shown in some theaters as Death on Safari. And in the cast of that one were Donald Pleasance, Brenda Vaccaro, and Sly Stallone's brother, Frank Stallone. But do keep an eye out for that 1945 version called And Then There Were None. It's terrific. Up next, our marathon of films based on famous novels rolls on with a gripping adaptation of Truman Capote's look at one of the most famous real-life crimes of the 1950s.
Tonight on Turner Classic Movies, our spotlight on great adaptations continues with In Cold Blood,